From then on, my grandfather became a soldier and was highly valued. Unfortunately, that era was chaotic, with warlords fighting. Anyone with 100-man army could carve out a territory. Today you destroy me, tomorrow someone else will deal with you. Few powers could last long. The army my grandfather joined was not large. In less than a year, it was utterly defeated by another army in a territorial struggle. Some died, others fled, and even the warlord who had promoted Ho Kwak-wa was struck down in battle. After the defeat, my grandfather fled back to his old village. By then, his old dilapidated house had long collapsed. Also, because he fled in such a hurry, he did not carry a single coin. He had not eaten for 2 consecutive days, and combined with rampant addiction, he had no choice but to sell his gun to bandits, exchanging it for some opium and food to solve the immediate danger. My grandfather pondered and said to himself, continuing like this is not an option. This bit of food and opium will last at most a few days, but what then, after it's all eaten and smoked? He suddenly remembered that about over 100 miles away was Thap Tam Lee Street, an area with many graves of high-ranking officials and nobles, containing countless valuable burial objects. Ho Kwak-wa, who had been a soldier and fought in battles, was much bolder than before. In the army, my grandfather had heard many stories about grave robbing from an old soldier. Grave robbing in folk parlance was often called do-do, which could bring great wealth, but if caught, one would surely be beheaded. Therefore, he dared not act during the day, so he risked taking a lamp and a hoe to the desolate Thap Tam Lee grave area on a fuzzy moon night. What is a fuzzy moon? It means a cloudless sky, but the moonlight is not bright, it's hazy and dim. Of course, we modern people know this is a natural phenomenon. Such a moon is often called a moon halo, a harbinger of strong winds. But people in the countryside back then knew nothing about science. In some rural areas, people called it a moon-growing fir, and some even said that on such an overcast moonlit night, restless spirits and ghosts preferred to wander. As soon as he arrived, he immediately drank half a caddy of wine to warm himself and gain courage. That night the moon was cold, stars were sparse, and an eerie biting wind blew. The wisps flickered among the desolate graves. From time to time, strange birds cried out with a screech. The lamp in his hand flickered, dimming and brightening, seemingly ready to go out at any moment. Although my grandfather had drunk alcohol, he still broke out in cold sweat in that eerie haunted place. This effort was in vain. The half caddy of white wine he drank seemed to have no effect. All the alcohol flowed out through his pores. Fortunately, this was a desolate grave area with no one around. He was not afraid of anyone hearing him, even if he yelled loudly. My grandfather then sang a few mountain songs to boost his courage, but he did not know many songs. After a few lines, he ran out of repertoire, so he resorted to singing a few familiar, everyday tunes like 18 Touches and Longing for 5 Watches. My grandfather took a gamble, trembling as he stepped into the middle of the cemetery. There was a solitary, unmarked grave. Strangely, the coffin was not buried underground, but stood upright in the middle of the grave, with more than half of it exposed. The coffin looked very new, with 18 coats of glossy red lacquer shining strangely under the dim moonlight from time to time. My grandfather muttered to himself, "Why is this coffin placed like this? Damn it, it's so strange, I'm afraid it's not ordinary. But I'm already here. If I do not open it, will this trip be in vain? Dying of hunger from lack of money is still death. Having an opium fit is also death. Might as well let the ghosts choke me to death for pleasure. I've been screwed over by them my whole life, damn it. Today I'll take a gamble. Once I start, I'll finish it." Having thought this, my grandfather immediately swung his shovel and dug up the soil that buried the lower half of the coffin, revealing the entire coffin. As an addict with weak physical strength, he was exhausted just from digging a little soil. He did not rush to open the coffin, but sat down on the ground, pulled out some opium he carried, and took a sniff. Stimulated by the opium, his nerves became more excited. My grandfather gritted his teeth, stood up sharply, and pried open the coffin lid with his shovel. The corpse inside was unexpectedly a beautiful woman, her face as bright as if alive. However, the powder on her face was too thick, and her cheeks were marked with 2 round crimson spots, standing out on the white powder like 2 bright red beetle leaves. The body wore a phoenix crown with cloud streamers and a red-green robe dressed like a bride. Was this corpse just buried, or has it been buried for some time? This grave area has long been abandoned. Who has visited it in recent years? Could she have turned into a zombie? But at that moment, my grandfather could not think much. In his eyes, there were only the jewels hanging all over the corpse. In the flickering lamplight, the treasures glittered mesmerizingly. In addition, the burial objects included silver coins wrapped in red paper in stacks and countless gold foil sheets, too many to count. This time I'm rich. My grandfather excitedly reached out to remove the gem-studded ring from the corpse's hand when suddenly his wrist was grabbed by someone. He jumped in fright, composed himself, and saw that the person holding his wrist was an extraordinary elder. It turned out that when my grandfather was rushing to Thap Tam Lee Street, he had met a Feng Shui master named Sun along the way. Master Sun was a renowned sorcerer in the entire province. Not only could he read fortunes and observe Feng Shui, but he also knew how to divine with his fingers and understood the 5 elements and the Dunjia. As soon as Master Sun saw Ho Kwak Wa, he immediately noticed a dark aura covering my grandfather's face. He divined with his fingers and then exploded in anger. This rascal intends to dig up graves and harm his yin virtue. Now that he's met me, I absolutely cannot let him continue. Thinking this, the master followed him to stop him. At that moment, Master Sun suddenly grabbed Ho Kwak Hoa's arm and shouted loudly, "You thief! Aren't you afraid of divine retribution for doing such a thing?" As soon as these words were uttered, my grandfather felt as if he had been slapped in the face. He quickly knelt down, begging Master Sun to spare his life. Master Sun helped my grandfather up and said, "Although your morality is corrupt, you haven't committed a great crime yet. You must know that turning back is the shore. It's not difficult for me to help you, but you must become my disciple and completely quit opium." When my grandfather heard he had to quit opium, he initially thought it would be better to die. But after much deliberation, he realized that facing retribution would be far more painful. He then thought, well, as long as there's a will, there's a way. I'll just beg the old man to spare me for now. Later, when he's not paying attention, I'll continue smoking. How will he find out? Having made his calculations, my grandfather kowtowed and performed 8 prostrations to Master Sun as a disciple's ritual. Master Sun saw that my grandfather knew to correct his mistakes and nodded with satisfaction. Then he looked at the coffin my grandfather had opened and saw that the corpse inside looked as if it were still alive. He could not help but be startled, muttering to himself, "It seems this place is land that nourishes corpses. If this girl's body remains here for long, it will surely cause great disaster. It needs to be eradicated early." Then the master instructed my grandfather on what to do. The two of them worked together to lift the coffin lid, struggling to push the wooden lid back into place. They hammered long nails into it tightly and even sprinkled the coffin with ink lines crisscrossing like a go board, forming a dense black net that covered the strange coffin. After that, my grandfather piled up dry firewood and burned the red, lacquered silver, adorned coffin. The flames blazed fiercely, and plumes of black smoke continuously billowed into the sky, stinking unbearably. In the end, only a pile of ashes remained. At that moment, my grandfather remembered all the gold, silver, and jewels inside the coffin. He stomped his foot and sighed, full of regret, but it was too late. He then helped Master Sun and followed him to live with his master. Later, Master Sun used a secret method to cure my grandfather's addiction and also taught him character divination and feng shui. My grandfather then set up a small stall in the county town, helping people read fortunes and divine characters, earning a small income. He then married a girl from the countryside. He was grateful for his master's life, saving grace, and from then on he lived contentedly, and his life improved day by day. However, one time Master Sun caught a cold. From the onset of his illness, he invited countless healers and took many medicines, but his condition never improved. After a few years, the master rode the wind to heaven. Before his death, Master Sun called my grandfather to him and instructed, "You and I have the bond of master and disciple, but unfortunately, I, your master, haven't had time to impart any true skills to you. Here I have this ancient book, these 16, character yin, Yang Feng Shui Secret Arts. This book is incomplete, only half a volume remains, and it only records a few techniques for Feng Shui and finding grave sites. Keep it with you as a memento. As soon as Master Sun finished speaking, before his breath could even fully escape, he quickly departed from the human world. My grandfather buried his benefactor, Master, and whenever he had free time, he would pore over the old book his master left behind. Over time, he gradually grasped the profound principles within. He began traveling throughout the county, helping wealthy people find good land for their graves. Gradually, he gained a reputation, and his family fortunes prospered day by day. My grandmother bore him a son named Ho Van Tuyen. At the age of 17, Ho Van Tuyen, my father, was sent to the provincial capital to study at a school run by the Church of England. As a spirited young man who disliked constraints and was exposed to progressive revolutionary ideologies, he was filled with enthusiasm. Every night, my father dreamed of participating in revolutionary uprisings. Eventually, he resolved to leave home and ran to the revolutionary Holy Land, Yan'an. Later, my father joined the army and served until the country entered the era of reform and opening up. Then, during the Wai River campaign, my father was promoted to regimental commander of a regiment. After the crossing the Yangtze River campaign, he followed the army group south and settled his family there. Later, I was born. I was born exactly on August 1st, the founding day of the Chinese People's Liberation Army. My father then named me Ho Kien Kwan. As a result, when I went to kindergarten, there were 7 or 8 kids named Kien Kwan in the class. Seeing so many identical names, they changed my name to Ho Bat Nyat, meaning August 1st. My grandfather, Ho Kwak Wa, joked, "Great name change. Ho Harmony Peace, 8 turn handle, 1 unity copper." When I was 18, my family was subjected to struggle sessions. My parents' backgrounds were not very good. Both were taken away for isolation and investigation. My grandfather, meanwhile, was dragged through the streets for public criticism over his superstitious activities. Being an old man, frail and weak, he could not endure the torment and criticism, and passed away in less than a few days. My grandfather spent his entire life practicing feng shui for people, helping them choose burial sites, yet in the end he was cremated. Life is always so impermanent. Our house was searched a total of 3 times. All valuable items were confiscated. My grandfather, during his lifetime, loved collecting antiques. These items were either smashed or seized, none remained intact. Finally, the only thing that fortunately survived was the old book he told me to wrap in oilcloth and hide on top of the latrine. During the Cultural Revolution, young adults had 3 choices. First, join the army. This was the best option. One could train oneself and later switch careers, assigned to work in state agencies. Second, stay in the city and work as a laborer, which was also good. At least there was a steady salary. Finally, the unluckiest were those without many connections, no back doors, or whose families were subjected to struggle sessions like mine. These young people had no choice but to go to the mountains or the countryside to work. Would you advise me to choose a 4th path, which is to not go anywhere and stay quietly at home? That would not work either. In those days, there was no concept of sitting idle and enjoying life. Everyone was a screw in the socialist society. Everyone had a purpose. If one stayed at home, the neighborhood committee, schools, and the intellectual youth office would come day after day, constantly encouraging until one finally agreed. But some people persevered until the very end. They did not go anywhere. So, what could be done to them? Such people were eventually allowed to stay in the city and were assigned jobs. Many things were like that. It could not be clearly explained. The longer one lived, the more confused one became. People never knew what the rules were, and not everyone knew the unwritten rules. At that time, I was too young and did not know what specific work going to the mountains or countryside entailed. Anyway, with my background, I could not join the army even if I wanted to, and no one would arrange a job for me in the city. If I did not go participate in labor, I did not know where else to go. At that time I thought, if I must go, I will. The sky is vast, the sea is wide, and my heart is red. Since I'm leaving home anyway, I might as well go as far as possible. Most young people chose to go to Yunnan or Xinjiang. I chose Inner Mongolia. Besides me, there was my friend named Vong Kai Tuyen, a pale and hefty guy, hence his nickname Fatty Quan. The place we arrived at was called Quang Quang Camp. I had never heard of this place name before. When we boarded the train to leave, no one came to see us off. Compared to the lively scene when people saw off those joining the army, the situation for intellectual youth like us was much more tragic and solemn. I only carried with me the 16-character Yin Yang Feng Shui secret arts book hidden on top of the public latrine. I did not even know what kind of book it was. I just knew it was the only thing left of my family. I kept it with me, and whenever I felt homesick, I would take it out to read for comfort.